Hey everybody, it's Michael from the Watch Preserve, and today we have a really cool episode for the Timelines podcast. On today's episode, you're going to learn about what happens to a watch when you're thrown through a plate of glass. You're going to learn about the ins and outs of the film industry and how to search the bottom of a lake for a Rolex Submariner. It's a really interesting episode with a really cool guest. Be sure to tune in. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Timelines podcast presented by the Watch Preserve. I'm your host, Michael, and I got a super cool guest today. When he's not being thrown through glass or getting beaten to a pulp on the silver screen or on the home screen, you might have seen him on watch platforms such as Teddy Baldassar or Fratello, talking about his awesome watch collection and even searching the bottom of the lake for a long-lost Rolex Submariner. He's a Hollywood stuntman, diver, watch enthusiast, and all-around total badass. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tom Place to the show. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Good to see you, buddy.
Happy you made it here, man. We've talked a bit online on Instagram, as most watch people do, but this is kind of
for a while now. Yeah,
for a while. Yeah, this is kind of our first time actually sitting down face to face and doing some chatting. So, how are things over? How are things over in Jersey?
They're good. You know, it's a beautiful day today. I'll be outside later, but yeah, things are good. Things are good.
Yeah, man. Happy to hear it. I'm really excited to sit down because, we've talked a little bit kind of about the arts industries. I do professional opera singing, and you are obviously, full-time very much involved in the world of cinema and film. So we've been able to talk a little bit about that, but I'm excited to kind of sit down now and sort of really go through, how watches are kind of involved in our worlds and, sit down and talk about some stuff. But my first question, and I think most people's first question probably when they meet a stuntman, is how do you get into being a stuntman? Because I think with actors, probably most people assume, you go to acting school and then you go to LA or New York for auditions, but stuntman may or may not be similar to that. So for somebody who has no idea how you do that, I mean, how did that become a big part of your life?
So my brother and I kind of knew from a young age that we wanted to maybe eventually get into the film industry. We've been making our own home action movies since we were 5 and 6. And then as we got older, we developed plot lines, we threw stunts in, and everybody always loved the stunts. And we both went to college, and after college it was like we can just jump into the real world, or we could try to get into the film industry, which is what we've always kind of talked about, on a back burner. And what would the most fun aspect of making movies be? And it's like, dude, let's do the stunts, man. Like, we grew up with, Indiana Jones and Rambo. Let's be those guys that are doing that kind of, cool action. And my wife, Allie, found that there was a stunt school down in Florida. I went to University of South Florida. And, we called them up and kind of got the details of the stunt school. And it was 6 weeks of almost like a basic training of getting hit by cars and, learning how to do high falls and, fighting for camera. And then after that, it becomes like an actor. You go through the starving actor phase of, trying to get your foot in the door, because you can't work on a SAG film without being in SAG. So, but you can't get your SAG card, the Screen Actors Guild card, unless you work on a SAG film, Right. So it's kind of like, okay, we got to figure this out. And then it was, just, a bunch of years of, I was pumping gas and working construction, and I was just day trading, trying to make ends meet while I, picked up. I think my first year was like 1 or 2 jobs, and then the next year was like 3 jobs, and, you're like, do I even continue with this, or do I get something real job, move to a real career? And then,
exactly.
And then the ball starts rolling, So,
yeah, I think that's like what some people realize and some people might not about really anything in the arts is like how, at least from my point of view, how saturated the market is kind of trying to get into it. You're coming up and you've got all this talent and this excitement and the drive to do it, and then you kind of get out there in the real world for the first time and you're like, oh man, like this is way harder than, and people told me it'd be hard, but is harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I'm like, I've never heard of anybody that is a stuntman or anybody who wants to become a stuntman. Like, they probably need stunt guys. And then you finally get your foot in the door, and so do 20 other guys. And you're like, wait a second, where did all these guys come from? They're like, and we're all kind of 5'11", 220, We're like, we we all play the same roles. This is not good. There's so many guys out there. So yeah, it is more saturated than you'd think.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, like, for the training process about stuntmen. Like, I've done some stage combat stuff, with different weapons and, hand-to-hand things like that. But every time I watch an action movie or whatever, it's like, okay, I see the fight choreography, I see this, and then somebody gets thrown down a flight of stairs. How do you train for some of those more physical stunts that aren't just fight choreo?
I think a big part of it is just kind of always staying in shape. Like, I'm off today. I've already been to the gym, and I've already done a big stretch. I have a whole bunch of foam rollers. I have the Theroux gun, the hypervolt version of that, but just always kind of staying limber.
Mm-hmm.
You never do know. I could get called tomorrow to fall down the stairs, and if I'm kind of out of practice, I haven't been into the gym, I haven't been stretching, I haven't been running. Like, sure, I could give you a couple good falls down the stairs, and then I'll be out of commission for, a couple of weeks because I'm probably going to pull something bad. So it's just kind of something like falling down the stairs or like getting hit by a car. It's just going to suck. But if you could have your body in as good a place before that day of work, then it's, kind of takes some of the negative effects off.
Yeah. It's kind of like being, it really is like being an athlete, and this is something that I find with a lot of people that are in the arts or artistic performance spaces is, what you see in the final product is 5% of the total work that you put in, as far as being in shape all the time, staying on your game all the time, and doing all that work behind the scenes. I see a lot of your Instagram posts. You're doing the gym wrist checks, using your watches in the gym. I always wear like a G-Shock or something when I'm working out. I'd never take my mechanicals in, but that's kind of a hallmark of what you could say you call it a brand or whatever, but just your persona is really using your watches, your mechanical watches. You are not afraid to take them out and put them through their paces. For any of our listeners who haven't yet seen Tom's feature on Teddy Baldazar's channel on YouTube, he starts the interview process by taking a bag of his watches and just dumping them out on the table, which for some people probably gave him heart palpitations. But for me, I was like, yeah, man, you throw those watches on the table. It's cool to always meet people who use their watches. And you use pretty much most stuff that you film, you're wearing a watch, right? Yeah,
I try, like when you work on a show like Boardwalk Empire, you don't try to sneak a watch on when you shouldn't. Like when you hire me for a day of work, I'm going to bring the best, A game I could bring. And it's not going to be, I'm working on a 1920s film, I'm going to sneak my Rolex on. No. It's, it's like, all right, I guess I can't wear a watch today. But yeah, whenever you're a cop or a SWAT guy or what we call an ND stuntman, like a nondescript stuntman, if there's an explosion on the street and I'm just around there and I get blown onto the ground, I'm going to wear my watches, and I'm going to try to fit my watch to the character.
I love that you try to. I think there's in one of your interviews you mentioned playing a cabbie in 1980s, I think, and the director comes up and says, is that a period appropriate watch? And I like that there's that attention to detail, both from the administrative side, but on your side too. Like, I wondered, have you ever been watch shopping? Like what's the kind of counterplay there? Like, are you watch shopping thinking, oh yeah, this would be a good watch if I ever play like this kind of guy, or did they just kind of happen organically as you're going with your collection?
It just kind of happens organically. I don't think of like, oh, what do I want to wear to work? It's just kind of, what do I want to wear for my day-to-day life, which will be working out, riding my dirt bike, going to the gym, driving around with the kids. So it's, I don't think I've ever bought a watch for like, oh man, I'm going to be playing a cop for a while. I need to get this blacked out.
Yeah.
Watch whatever. No, I haven't really done that.
Every cop that I've ever seen, I think, wears a G-Shock. I don't think I've ever seen a cop wearing anything else.
I got into G-Shocks in high school. I probably have 7 or 8 of them, and I don't think I've worn one since college. So I feel like I kind of did the whole G-Shock thing, and now when I'm like, oh, do I want to throw on like a G-Shock for work? It's like, nah, just throw on.
there's more interesting choices.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where, well, I mean, where you are explicitly told like you can't wear that watch, man, you can't do that?
I was told you got to use common sense too, because the costume department, they're probably just told like if somebody has personal jewelry, tell them to take it off.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on a show called The Deuce, and the third season took place in 1985, and I'm like, I'm going to be a cop in the subway. It's like a subway chase. I got to tackle somebody, so I'm going to wear my 6309. It was a 1978, Seiko Turtle. I'm like, I'm going to wear this watch, and they're like, oh, your watch isn't period appropriate. You have to take that off. And I'm like, no, this is from 78. And they go, yeah, but it's not period appropriate. You have to take it off. So it's like, no problem. You take it off, you put it in your pocket, and then you put it right back on when you're out of the wardrobe trailer. And it's no disrespect to the costumers, but, they don't know that the watch is absolutely fine for a cop in 1985 to be wearing.
Sure, we have to come
from since I know watches, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we have this immense knowledge of this very, very tiny thing, and the professionals in the field are worrying about how everybody looks, how 35 actors on screen look and costumes all look right and everything like that. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Can't begrudge them that.
Yeah, but if somebody has a legitimate reason and like you can't have a watch in this scene, like this show is very time oriented, we don't want to see any whatever, then it's like, all right, fine, I'll take it off, and then as soon as the day's over, I throw it back on. But
when you say time oriented, do you mean like oh, this scene takes place at exactly like noon, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and then do I want to unscrew my crown and reset my watch to 12:10 after every take? Yeah. It's like, do I want to do that for 30 takes? No, I'll just take the watch off and not worry about it.
Yeah. Have you ever so when you're able to get the watch on screen and you've done it, like what was there one that you're like specifically proud of, like a shot where one of your watches really stands out when you're watching it after and you're like, yeah, that's it?
Yeah. I told this story before, so I don't want to bore anybody, but I was working on the show Billions, and I had just got the BBGMT, the Tudor BBGMT, nice. And my buddy shows up with a Tudor Submariner, like one of the MNs, and we were like, man, we have to try to get our watches on camera, and we had to escort an actor out of the room, and I'm like, why don't you throw your watch on your right wrist? I'll have it on my left wrist. And we'll put our hands up on the guy's chest as we push him out of the room and into the elevator, and hopefully we'll get like a cool wrist shot. And it worked out. And
nice.
That one I was pretty proud of. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I mean, I'm trying to think of some other. There's a bunch. Off the top of my head, I can't really think. The movie Inside Man, I was able to get a watch in that and see it in the final product, and like you could tell what kind of watch it was. And
nice,
oh man, this is cool.
That's cool. It also kind of like. From the watch perspective, as a watch enthusiast, when you're watching a movie, we know this, like the watches that people wear say a lot about them, and so the way that you're able to consciously kind of tie in, like you said, well, a 1980s cop wearing a 6309, maybe he was a former military guy or something like that, like tying in the watches to the characters is a really kind of very subtle but very specific way to flesh out the idea of who you're playing on screen, right?
Yeah. Plus, I want other watch nerds like to be watching it and be like, "Oh, dude, that's the BBGMT! Like, oh, this is cool!" Like the watch spotting aspect is just fun, and I want other people who are nerds like I am about this to be like, "Hey, I think the guy has a Panerai on," or whatever it is.
Kind of like the like insider handshake, little secret thing. Have you ever been like, speaking of watch people are always looking at other people's wrists, right? Mm. Have you ever, like one of the stars on screen, any of the big names that you've worked with, have you ever kind of been like, hey man, it's a nice Tudor, or maybe vice versa? Has anybody else ever kind of clocked what's on your wrist on set?
Nobody's clocked what's on my wrist. I've clocked what's on a couple actors' wrists when they're in their wardrobe. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, hey, man, is that a Longa? And they're like, I don't know, props gave it to me, and it's a fake watch,
Yeah.
The only dude that would show up to work every day with his personal watches on was Justin Theroux on a show called White House Plumbers, and he always wore a solid gold Submariner.
Ha.
And so one day, we have to fit him for a stunt harness, and I'm in his trailer, and I'm like, hey, Justin, I got to ask you about the watch. I've seen you like in magazines with this watch on, and you're wearing it every day to work. And he was like, it was like his eyes lit up, and he was excited to tell me the story about how it was his birth year watch and how he tracked it down and all that stuff, and how he wears it every day. And he was like one of the only actors who I've ever known as, okay, this guy's into watches. He wore a few watches throughout the season, real nice ones. But most people that I talk to about their watches, it's always, this is from props, and they're not into watches. Oh, okay. So Tom Selleck, one of the biggest,
big
watch guys. He'd always show up to work and like do his rehearsals in his plain clothes before he went and got in wardrobe. And every day he'd have usually some form of GMT. He had the solid gold GMT with the green dial.
Oh, nice.
But I don't think oh man, it was so nice. Yeah. But he would also wear the Magnum watch, and we had a couple conversations about like the actual Magnum watch. So
sick.
He was another guy, but there's not many of them out there.
Yeah, Tom Selleck definitely seems like he's got a pretty bang-up watch collection for sure.
From what I've seen, it's all Rolex, but yeah, he must.
Yeah, Rolex can be bang-up,
Right.
Who needs variety?
Of course. Yeah.
Have you ever, I'm curious, so you're wearing your watches while you're doing the stunts, right? Have you ever totally just messed one up, or for the most part, are you able to maintain the integrity of your collection?
Basically maintain the collection, the integrity, of the collection. Most of the time what happens on set is like I'll throw it on a NATO, and then I'll just have the watch, like ripped off my wrist. One of the spring bars will pop. I now carry extra spring bars like in my stunt bag, which is where I keep all my gear. But I've had on the show the Leftovers, we had a big like riot scene, and on take one my Citizen Nighthawk is ripped off.
Oh.
And I'm like, I don't have any more spring bars. I got to put it in my pocket. I missed a robot. My Omega Seamaster went flying across the room again on a NATO. The one watch that kind of took a beating, I don't have it down here with me, but was my Torgo, and it's a Torgoan GMT, like a little Swiss quartz pilot watch. And I got thrown through a bus windshield. And when I landed on the pavement, I just felt it kind of like, scrape on the ground, and you messed up. Like you could see that there was, very visible damage. But when I see it, it reminds me of that night, and
right.
And being thrown through a bus window. I still have a lump in my leg from it. So there's different reminders of different
physical injury and injury to the watch collection too.
Yeah.
So you just probably have almost no trust of NATO straps anymore, or at least on traditional like spring bars, right?
Yeah, that kind of came about. Yeah, like throughout my years of wearing watches, I've been wearing NATOs since the 90s. I've been neutering NATOs since the 90s too, and once you have a number of watches pop off, and it's like, oh man, my NATO saved my watch. Then after a while, you're like, this doesn't happen when I have my watch is on a bracelet. I wonder if, having a good, solid fitting end link actually alleviates a lot of pressure on the spring bar, and it's not, going to pop something out. And yeah, so I like NATOs. I wear NATOs, but usually if I'm going to go diving or something, I'll try to grab like my Tudor Pelagos, and because that has the best, bracelet and clasp in the business, and I'll throw that on, but. Yeah, so I like NATOs, but I'm not super trustworthy. I think they're the cause of the spring bar failure, more times than we know.
That's fair. That's true. That's sort of a not a misconception in the community, I guess. It will save the watch because you have that kind of redundancy, but the uneven pressure on the spring bars probably is more so what's responsible for popping them off or not. I've only lost one thing on a NATO, and it was actually on a dive trip. It was I was diving with Chris Soule and Tim Edlin, two of our friends that are in the watch community and big into this kind of stuff. But we were on a trip in South Florida. This would have been 3 years ago now, I think, almost. And they had both previously popped spring bars on their dive watches the day before I got down there. So 2 in a day. And then the first day that I show up, I was wearing not a watch, but I was wearing my dive computer on a NATO strap. and I was kitting up and must have been sliding through the BCD strap or something, and bing, there it goes, and I hear it, I go, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm never gonna get this back on a dive boat,
Right.
you know. And sure, when we're looking around and we're trying to find it, and this lady across the way goes, "Is this it?" And it was sitting on her fin, the spring
nice.
bar. So what I didn't say was that Chris and Tim both found their spring bars, and I found my spring bars. So we were 3 for 3 on
Wow.
popping a bar and then also finding it. It's a very
That's
lucky
awesome.
trip. Very lucky trip. Have you? I guess this is a good segue into diving. Talking about diving stuff now. Was this something that you kind of picked up around the days when you were in South Florida in school? Did you learn to dive down there, or is this something that you kind of grew up doing?
I got certified in 2015. Prior to that, we went on a couple of island vacations, back in the early 90s when I was 13, 14, 15. And we would always do the resort scuba, and we just absolutely loved it. It would be me, my dad, and my brother. And I don't know why we never, came home and then was like, let's go get certified. Like, we love, diving. We do it once a year. We could do it more if we. But it was always just kind of the resort course, dive. Like, you go in the pool for an hour, you go in the classroom for an hour, and then they take you out to like a 40-foot dive.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I first fell in love with it. I remember standing on the bottom of the ocean, which was crystal clear. I mean, visibility forever. And just being like, I'm standing on the bottom. I was 14. I'm standing on the bottom of the ocean, and I had my tag on. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So fast forward to 2015 was when I finally was like, I don't even know how old I was then, 30-something. I'm like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So it's time to dive. And that's when I went and got certified.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's such a similar story, I think, with a lot of people. That first time that you're on your first open water dive, and you kind of have that second, after you're like doing your drills or whatever. Like for me, first open water dive, you're practicing the skills from the pool out in the open ocean. And, you're there and you do your mask clear or whatever, and then you're kind of like looking around, and it's just like, it's the most magical feeling when you're doing it. And for me, I mean, I had Derek Hager on a previous episode, and
another good guy.
Yeah, great guy, big diver.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I feel kind of like a broken record now talking about the connection between watches and diving, but they're really there, and I think it also kind of plays into kind of like what you were talking about when you were growing up with your brother, growing up with Indiana Jones and James Bond and Rambo and these heroes, using tools in adventurous situations and everything. It all kind of ties in, I think, to that kind of romance as a kid.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Plus, my dad was he was basically a one-watch guy. He bought a gold day date in the mid-'70s when his company finally hit some success. And that was like his one watch until maybe 1995 when I slowly started getting him into other, watches and stuff. But I mean, he would do the resort course, scuba dives in his gold day date. I mean, he would work on the cars. He would change the oil in it. He would paint the house. He'd get paint on it and just, scrub it off. He never took it off.
Yeah.
And I just kind of grew up watching that and being like, you buy your watch and you wear your watch. Like, I didn't even have the thought of like, oh, if I'm going to work on the car, I got to take my watch off. I don't want to scratch it. It's just, like, that thought wasn't even there. It was just, you don't take your watch off. Like, that's part of you.
So, okay, I have to ask a tough question then. So, if you were going to be a one watch guy, I know. Well, what would it be? Is it something that you already have, or is there like a grail piece on the horizon, you think?
I mean, a grail piece would probably be like a Vacheron Overseas, but from what I have, I always, we all think about this, question. We all ponder.
Yeah, deep in the small hours of the night,
It would be between my Pelagos LHD and my GMT Master, or my Rolex GMT Master. Mm-hmm. I would probably end up going with the GMT Master just because if I do get bored, like I've got like a whole bunch of different bezels.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So I just pop in. If I want to make it a root beer, I make it a root beer. If I want to make it, Coke or Pepsi or just all black, I could change it up, and that would probably keep me from thinking about other watches for a while. So I would probably go with the GMT Master if it was just one.
First of all, fantastic choice, great watch. Those are the older GMTs. The new ones are nice, but anything pre-maxi case with Rolex for me is so much better.
Mm-hmm.
I love too. I think Rolex people, no disrespect to Rolex people, but I think if a lot of Rolex guys heard that you were just kind of flipping out the bezel insert on your GMT, they would kind of lose it a little bit. So
right.
I love that you're just kind of, again, taking something that can seem serious like a Rolex watch and saying, well, I like this color today. Why take it so seriously? It's just a watch, and you want to wear it and love it and enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
And the Rolex, that GMT has kind of a special meaning to you, right? Because you got that to replace something that you lost. Is that right?
So, yeah, not exactly. So after I lost the sub, and I wrote a letter to Rolex, and they gave me almost half off on a brand new Rolex. I got a GMT Master. I got a 1996 GMT Master that I sold in 2018 when I saw the prices of Rolexes. And I was like I've already had this watch for 22 years. Like, I put in my time with it. I might as well sell it and try like a brand new sub with a maxi case and all that stuff. I was like, they're over-engineered. It's time that I get rid of the jangly old Rolex and buy something new. So I sold it for a killing, and I bought a brand new 2018 Submariner that as soon as I put on my wrist, I was like, I think I made a mistake. So I sold that to a buddy at retail, and then I got a used 1997 GMT Master. So yes, it's still a GMT Master, but it's not my original 22-year-old GMT Master 2 that I wore for everything.
Sure.
But so it does have a special place, but it's I kind of wish, like, if I had any watch regret, it's probably selling that watch.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have.
It's a continuation of part of the story, though. That's part of the collecting journey is
learning as we go.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we just kind of hinted at it, but we got to talk about the sub, because this is one of the stories that everyone loves from your time in the watch space, and it's a great story because I think probably a lot of people have lost watches and always wanted for the opportunity to be able to go back and find them, which you are actively doing. So for the listeners who haven't yet heard this story, just give us the rundown, man.
So as a diehard watch nut, I'm an 18-year-old kid, and I'm in college, and there's a Mayors Jewelers, and they have a whole bunch of Rolexes, and I would go in every day, and I would look at the Rolexes and just talk to the guys. They were very knowledgeable, and I just loved learning about the watches, and I was like, I have to buy myself something. And I took my life savings. I mean, it was like nearly every single dollar I have. It was a $3,100 Rolex. I think since I couldn't even afford the tax on it, I had it sent to my parents' house in New Jersey, which was out of state, so I didn't have to pay the tax. And then I was like, hey guys, you're going to be getting something. Can you just send it down to me when you get it? And then I proceeded to lose it in a lake that summer. 6 months later, it was gone. And because I wrote to Rolex and I kind of got a replacement watch, I never really put much thought into, let me try to find it, until 2018. Me and my buddy Greg, who's a dive master, we're sitting down, we're having a couple scotches one night, and he's like, we could find, that watch. Like, you have a ballpark of where you lost it. Like, we could find it. I'm like, you think so? And then I start doing, research about, metal detectors, and then I start assembling a little team of the metal detector specialist, the dive specialist, and talking to, divers in the FDNY who find, when somebody commits murder and they throw the gun in the Hudson River, they go find that gun.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, put together a plan, and I called it Expedition 16610, the model number of the watch, just as a joke. And then I really started diving in 2020, and then I had a bunch of family and friends hey, how's the search going? Have you found your watch? This and that. And I'm like, you know what? Let me make an Instagram account just for family and friends, like so they could kind of see the pictures. Like I have an underwater camera and I'm taking photos, and that's kind of when I found this community. Like I'd always been on forums and I was on the websites, the blogs with comment sections, but I never like had any friends in like the watch world, and that's where I kind of found like, oh man, there's a bunch of me out there who love their watches and this like community, and it's been pretty cool. It's been awesome.
I think first of all, I mean, I'm such a fan of that story because it's like, you know, it's like action, you know, doing the thing and going to get it. It is kind of, you know, pardon the joke, I guess, but it's like a movie, I guess, you know what I mean? Kind of going and doing it. But to the point where you're saying you're finding that online community, I think a lot of us in the watch space, specifically kind of over those pandemic years, really fostered some great friendships and cool acquaintances just in the online space in that time.
Look at us now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, exactly.
Like,
There's so many good people out there in the watch world, very passionate people that want to tell their stories and just share their experiences and their watches with other like-minded folks. And it's out of all the communities that I've been of different hobbies and interests, watches are kind of the ones I keep always coming back to. It's like you come for the watches and you stay for the people.
Yeah.
So how's the search going so far? How much of the percentage of the area have you covered?
I mean, I've got I forget the exact number. I'm in the ballpark of about 35 hours of like actual bottom time searching for the watch now.
Okay.
Sometimes when I'm down there, like it feels like I could find the watch at any minute. Like I'm gonna find this thing.
Yeah.
Then there are other times when you're just like you're buried in the muck and like the weeds are all over you, and you're looking around like there's so much to search down here.
Yeah.
Like even if it's the size of like a driveway, that'll take forever. Like there's so much like to do. Like this is an impossible task. And then like I said, other times, you know, you're down there and like you're covering a lot of ground and you're finding, you know, little things. Whenever you get a hit on the metal detector, like you actually find something and you're like if I could find this fish hook, I can find a watch. If I go over a watch, I'm finding it.
Yeah.
So I just got to keep going. Just got to keep, you know.
You know what we ought to do is we ought to get some of these other watch inclined divers out there for a couple days over the summer or something like that. Get some extra fins in the water and really start to cover some area.
That's what I've thought about. I've had a couple of divers up there who aren't exactly used to like the muck that's on the bottom of a lake, and like they kind of drop, like we drop a search marker buoy and then we search like a radius around the search marker buoy, and they'll drop their search marker buoy, but they're so grossed out, and then they kind of lose where they put it. And then once you're storing up the bottom, like there's no viz, and then it's like they don't know where they searched, and I'm like, wait, so now I have a search marker buoy that's been unsearched. You know, so it's kind of backfired on me in the past. But if I could get like a couple of, you know, guys who are used to diving in a lake, who are used to how nasty it is down there. Like sometimes I'm down there and I'm just like, this is disgusting. You come up with leeches and just like the weeds are all over you, and like sometimes you feel like the weeds are pulling you, you know, down, and you just got to be like, just breathe. Like there's no monsters down here.
We'll have to make that like a special PADI certification or something.
Right.
The Expedition 16610. That's crazy, man. So movies, diving, searching for watches. Have you ever, thinking again about the two combined, like you've probably done just about every stunt in the book, every sort of, you know, driving stunt, climbing, combat, or whatever. Is there anything that you've seen in a movie where you've been like, man, that's a cool stunt, I want to know how they did that, or I want to be involved in something like that? Are there like check marks for you, stuff you'd like to do in that industry?
There's definitely stuff that I'd like to still do, yeah. Like when I watch a movie like John Wick, and there's like when they're fighting in, you know, France, and there's not only a fight scene and a shootout, but 30 car hits like that happen, and you know, it's like I know how you do all those individually, but like just the scale of something like that is like this is insane.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how exactly did they do that? Like, are they really on the street there? What elements are VFX? Which elements are practical and which are. But like, I would like to. You don't really do many high falls anymore. Like, everything you're on a wire, which is why I want to go see The Fall Guy. They did 150 foot, like, actual,
wow.
old school high fall in that. But I'd love to do like a big wire gag where I get to jump off, the roof of a building that is hundreds of feet up and just, have that feeling of, falling, and then, you decelerate, before you actually hit the pavement.
Yeah.
I'd like to do something like that. I've never done a cannon, which is a driving stunt. Basically, when you see a car, driving and they start to skid, and then all of a sudden they, go into like a barrel roll, they flip and they go into rolls, like James Bond.
In Casino Royale. With
with the Aston Martin.
Yeah,
So basically, that's called a cannon. They like build this little cannon in the back of the car. It like shoots basically like a chunk of telephone pole out of the bottom into the ground, and that's what propels the car up and over.
Sure.
I've never done something like that. I'd love to do that, but yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good. If I walked away from stunts now, like if you offered me like a great paying job down there with you, and I moved down, it's like I kind of feel like I've done everything.
Sure.
And I would be okay walking away, but not that I want to. I still love like doing that kind of stuff. I get calls sometimes like, hey man, like, I kind of need somebody to fall down the stairs. I know you're mid-40s now, and I'm like, stop. I want to do it. I still feel good. Like, give me the stunts. Don't just give them to the young guys.
How much have you seen change? You just touched on something kind of interesting a minute ago. What have you seen change? Because when you were coming up in the business, I mean, obviously there was special effects and CGI, but just in the past 10 years, look at how much has shifted from practical effects to CG. It's like, what are some of the biggest things that you've seen change within the effects industry, particularly within Hollywood, for stunts and for things like that? Like, what are some of the biggest things?
I mean, I think, like, we were also afraid that once, like, the visual effects gets good enough, they're not going to need stunt guys anymore. I think that was the fear. I guess that still is the fear now that AI is getting so much insanely better, every single day something else is new. But with the advent of better VFX, they don't, like, when you read a script, if there's a huge stunt sequence with big explosions and guys flying everywhere, they used to cut a lot of that out. Like, okay, let's make everything smaller, like, so we could do it practically in the studio. And now you can still do it practically with guys on wires who are blowing up and flying, but then they can just make everything bigger and even more, visually, like, holy cow, how did they do that? Like, these guys are flying through the air, but we're still actually doing the stunts practically, but they just kind of embellish everything and, kind of add to it.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I kind of thought, like, the stuntman would be like a thing of the past. Like, by now, it's the VFX has kind of really helped us. And I mean, we'll see. There's a whole thing now with AI. Like, I just did an episode of a superhero show where they take an AI body scan. They have like 360 cameras, and they basically, you have to sign off on a digital replica of yourself. And then it's like, wait, so if my digital replica works, do I get paid?
Right,
so it's we're still trying to figure all that stuff out. But we'll see, like, what comes about with AI, as it keeps evolving and getting crazier.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, for all creatives and all artists,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
a tricky kind of space. I mean,
Yeah.
it's getting to that point where, some people are getting kind of nervous, but hopefully everything. Again, that's a separate podcast. We could do we can do watch guys who are also performer people talking about the industry. That's people don't want that. Nobody wants that.
But once they make me stop wearing my watch and they put an AI watch on, that's when I'm
You're
done.
out.
That's
You're
when I'm done.
quitting
I'm out.
on
I'm
that
out.
day.
Yeah.
So are movies like Fall Guy, like, I remember, it's always kind of cool, at least from the consumer end of it, when movies come out and it's like, oh, these are practical effects, or they're using real puppeteers and physical props and the real effects. So are movies like Fall Guy, are they still coming out with stuff where like they're really putting that emphasis on real effects and real actors and technicians and stuff?
Yeah, so I didn't work on Fall Guy. I wasn't involved in Fall Guy, but what I do know about it is, yeah, they really wanted to, show what stunt people can do, like the 150-foot high fall that they put into the movie.
Yeah.
They did a canon in that movie where they broke the record, like for car flips.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where one of the cool tidbits I just read in a magazine, but the stunt guy that actually did the stunt was a character in the movie, like who belts in Ryan Gosling before Ryan Gosling's going to do the stunt. Just a cool little thing that not many people are going to know, but
sure.
Yeah, they pushed the envelope, and like talk like that gets around within the stunt community, like, oh man, they're really doing this on Fall Guy, they're really doing that on this movie. They did this on John Wick, and it's like, I got to see this movie just to see and support what's being made through stunts and stunt work.
Yeah, it's like any industry really, where like when you're in it for so long and you start seeing these people that are really innovating and really like doing the work and doing cool stuff, it's like, how can you not get behind that? Yeah, I haven't seen Fall Guy yet, but it's definitely on the list.
Me neither.
But
it
looks. I'm a big Gosling fan, so it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We're getting to that 40-minute mark, so we can start kind of wrapping up here. Do you have anything watch related, like on the horizon? Is there anything that you're eyeing or maybe trying to get into in the collection?
Not really. I mean, I picked up a Rolex Explorer 2 in February.
Nice, congrats.
And that's kind of like, I sold 4 or 5 watches in order to get it. It's a big purchase, so I'm not really eyeing anything right now. But yeah, I have to continue selling. I have too many, so I need to start like, all right, I barely wear this. Let me pass it on to somebody who will actually wear it.
Have you taken the Explorer onto a film set yet, or?
Yeah, I've done some driving in it. I don't think I ever got it on camera yet, but I've done some. I've went diving in it, and yeah, I've done some stunt driving and stuff in it.
Great, man. Already putting it through its paces.
Yeah.
I love it. Its paces, Tom. Place, putting it through its places, maybe. I don't know. I need more coffee. Awesome, man. So do you have any projects coming up? I know you mentioned that you were maybe doing some filming this week for something. Is there anything that you can hint at that you're allowed to say?
Yeah, this week is it's a retelling of Frankenstein. I think the movie's called The Bride. I don't know exactly what I'm doing on it, but we'll be working on that this week. And then basically Poker Face season 2 is ramping up, which I'm the stunt coordinator of, which means I run the stunt department. I don't get to do the stunts, unfortunately. I have to hire everybody to do them, and I have to design how they're done. But that's starting to ramp up now. So and yeah, I mean, I was just down in Philadelphia last week. I was working on a show. It's like an FBI show, so you're working a couple overnights, getting to do some stunt driving, skidding up to the perps and then getting out with guns drawn and stuff. Sure. So, but yeah, for the future, for the most of June, and then it'll take me all the way till probably Christmas. Will be Poker Face, and that's probably the only thing I'll be on.
Great, man.
Hoping to sneak in a little wind up Chicago if I can, but. It's going to be tight this year. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel that. Poker Face season 1 was great. My brother and I watched that show. We loved it.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Stuff. Yeah, it was fun.
You going to fit some of your watches on your stunt team for season 2?
I mean, I would. You know what? I have a couple of stunt guys now who they make me laugh because they try too hard, like to get their watches on camera. Like they'll have to grab an actor and they'll just have like their watch up in the, and I'm like, no, you're ruining. Like just worry about the thing, and if we see your watch, we'll see your watch, but. The director of a couple episodes will be Ryan Johnson, and he's like a watch guy. He's got some nice stuff. So like he's all about the watches too. But yeah, we'll see.
Great, man.
See what we can fit on.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out whenever it wraps and gets out onto onto the TVs, and
yeah,
man, it'll be good. Hopefully, some good watch spotting. So we'll see.
Hope so.
Yeah. Hey, Tom,
So
thanks.
yeah.
I was gonna wrap up, but no, go ahead. What do you say?
Oh no. Let's wrap up. That's cool.
Fair enough. Thanks so much for coming on today, my man. Great, finally having a chance to chat with you a little bit, and we look forward to all your work coming out. We'll post up your socials for the sub hunt and everything like that, and all that stuff, so we can direct the people that way. And yeah, man, it's been a treat. Thanks so much.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
You too, man. Take care.
Right.